Hello there, and welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. Again, it's me, David Driver. It's a pleasure to be telling stories here again, and again it's coming from England, Yorkshire. I think the last time I was here, I think I was saying it's quite sunny, but here in the UK now we've got all the rain and the storms, but nevertheless I do have a couple of stories for you today, and as I always say, I want to bring about some imagination, creativity and inspiration, as it says behind me. Imagine, create, inspire. And I always start the stories by saying, under the light of the sun we shall weave our words of magic, and under the light of the moon we shall dream about them. Well, the two stories that I'm going to share with you today are copper penny tales. Copper penny tales, just like these, just like pennies. Pennies, coppers. So if you go around the world, doesn't matter where you are in the world, it's probably fair to say sayings such as I'm down to my last pennies, I've only pennies left, copper up, things like that. If you look at different currency, someone with gold coins, shiny gold coins, very valuable indeed, and silver, possibly worth a little bit less. So you can imagine if you have got gold coins or silver coins, could be able to buy some very, very nice things. But copper it's a little bit further down the the currency chart, if you like. So this story is about copper pennies, and it goes by the title of Bran and the 12 copper pennies. And where does it start? It starts hundreds of years ago in a faraway land, and the hero, if you like, of this tale is Bran. He lives with his mother, and they live at the top of a hill, quite a steep hilly path, in a very simple cottage. And there's only the two of them that live there. Apart from, when I say there's only two of them that live there, they do have a few chickens, because they get some eggs off the chickens, and a few goats, and because they can obviously drink the goat's milk and sell some of the goat milk on. And life was very simple for Bran. He's going to be 18 on his next birthday. His father, he'd never known his father, and they lived quite a simple life. They scraped by, if you like. And at the top, as I said, they live at the top of the mountain path. And if you went down the path, excuse me, there was a river, and that would take you west. You follow the river, you'd come to various towns and villages, and a few large cities along the way. Or you could take the alternative path. You could travel north along the northern trail. But if you kept at the top of the hill and went in the opposite direction, the main trail would take you south, or a couple of miles along the southern trail. You could branch off the path, should I say, branched off, and you could follow the eastern route. Now, Bran, big, strong boy, 18 on his next birthday. His mum knew he was looking for a little bit of adventure. She was very grateful that he'd stuck by her, quite a very kind, loving boy, and he'd stuck with her He repaired, when the roof started to leak, he would repair the roof. If some of the glass broke in the windows, he would be able to repair that, repair the door, do all the jobs around the little cottage. And he'd do the digging, he'd collect some of the eggs, he'd do all the sort of harder, more physical work that, unfortunately, his mother was no longer able to do. And how did they make a living? Well, many travellers, they came up the hill, they came up the path and past the cottage, or they came along the path from the south or the east and stopped at the cottage and then continued down the hill, and they just scraped by. Some of the travellers might be single travellers, might be travelling pairs, or sometimes in larger groups, and they used to buy eggs for the journey. Sometimes they'd buy a little bit of a few vegetables, a glass or a bottle of goat's milk, and every now and then Bran's mother would bake some nice bread. So that they scraped by on pennies. So one day, one evening, they sat having a little supper, and Bran announced. He said, "Mother, I'm going to leave you, but not forever. I need to find out what's out there. I need a little bit of adventure. I need some adventure in my life." And his mother was quite upset, but she tried not to show it. He'd done ever so well. Excuse me. He'd done ever so well. Approaching 18, he could have left a long time ago. Sometimes other travellers passed and tried to tempt him away. Bran had said no. Sometimes unfortunately, wars broke out. A lot of the young men used to go and join up and fight for king or queen, but not Bran. He'd stuck around, and she often wondered what would have happened if he'd had brothers, sisters, or a father. And all those thoughts were going around in her head. But she didn't say no, she didn't stop him. She wasn't happy. Bran continued. He said, "Mother, I'm going away. I'm going to travel. I'm going to travel for 9 full moons. I will return by the end of the 9th full moon. And that means I'll be back before the real winter sets in. When all the snow comes, the land will be harsh and barren, and you'll need me. And I'll be back to light the roaring fires and spend the winter with you." Because they used to tell tales, used to tell each other stories, and they always used to manage just to get enough money together for a lamb. Used to buy a lamb, slowly cook it, tasted absolutely beautiful. And his mum used to make some nice bread, and they'd put some butter on it and have some eggs. And it was such a lovely thing that they'd always done as far back as Bran could remember. So, having said this, I'm going to take a drink of coffee. Just excuse me. Mouth a little bit dry there. So what did he used to do? He said in the morning he was going to set off. And he had, just like these, to show you, he's going to set off. And I don't know if you can see in my hand, I'll show you in my hand, I have some pennies. Got some pennies there. Just everyday pennies. And Bran had 12 of those. He wasn't very wealthy people, but that was his own money. He said, "I'm taking my 12 copper pennies with me to see what I can do." So he set off, and he knew you could do a little bit of hunting. He knew how to do some fishing. He knew how to catch a rabbit or a hare. He knew what wild berries and wild fruit that he could. He knew what wild berries and wild fruit he could eat, and the ones that were poisonous probably upset his tummy. So he set off, and he had some clothes to keep him warm, He knew what he was doing. His mum was quite upset. She had a little cry, but they had a kiss and a cuddle. And he set off, and he decided to take the southern path. So he starts to walk, and he starts to think. And he walks, and he keeps going for a couple of days. Even when he took the eastern turning, or he passed, should I say, the eastern turning, he decided to stick on the main southern path. And he walks for a couple of days, and eventually, the young Bran, he comes to a nice village, very rich, very opulent village. And he looks at all the people. He can just tell by the clothes that they are wearing. Very rich, very lovely silks and nice cottons, lovely, vibrant colours. So he knows these people have probably have plenty of money. All the children are very well spoken. Mums and dads are riding around with horse and carriage. Lovely shops. And Bran knows, he's never seen anything like this. He knows it's a very, very opulent, very rich place indeed. So he continues to walk, and he walks past some of the shops, looks inside. Magnificent plates, furniture, pictures, fantastic things. All the shops are selling. And even when he walks past the taverns, this is really, really rich in everything they do. And eventually he comes to the market square, and there are people, they're selling chickens, and they're selling pheasants, and there are apples as juicy and as red as you can imagine. There's cheeses and spices and olives, many things on the market stalls, and there's gold jewellery and silver jewellery. And Bran takes it all in. And he's only got 12 pennies, so he can't really afford to buy anything like gold or silver jewellery. So he sits down on a wall by some of the stalls, and he starts to think, what could I buy, or should I buy anything? And then he sees a boy. He sees a boy sat on the wall just at the side, and it's quite a large boy. It's not this boy. Bran thinks, well, he can't have done not much walking. He can't have done much work on a farm. And the boy's eating. In fact, he's eating, and he's eating a lot of sweets. And Bran looks at him. He thinks, he's got a lovely haircut. He's got some gold jewellery himself. His clothes are very fine indeed. So he thinks this boy obviously comes from a very wealthy family. So Bran walks across and thinks he'll introduce himself. He says, good morning. He says, hello, my name's Bran. He starts to talk to the boy, and the boy's not really interested. Stuff in his face, never stops eating, and he's got food. He's got sticky food because the boy inside the bag eats a lot of sticky sweets, horrible sticky sweets, and he's eating with his mouth open, and he doesn't stop. And Bran looks and thinks, well, shall I go away? And he continues to shove all this food into his mouth, and it's all around his mouth, and it's all over his fingers, and some of it's gone down his front there. And Bran thinks to himself, goodness me, why can't you eat just a little bit slower? I've never seen sweets and chocolate like that. I would eat it nice and slowly and enjoy it with my mum. And eventually, the boy looks up, and through the sort of food and what Bran can make out, the boy attempts to say hello, but doesn't say his name. And he keeps eating, and eventually, the boy, he runs out of food. And he mutters something, as if like, oh, I've got no food left. And he screws the bag up and throws it on the floor. And Bran doesn't like this. But at the side of the boy, there's a little matchbox. And he gets curious, does Bran, as to what's in the matchbox. So Bran asks, and the boy doesn't answer at first. And eventually, What does the boy do? Well, he goes like, and he wipes his mouth, and he uses his sleeve. What a horrible thing to do! And he wipes all the food that's around his mouth. He wipes it off with his sleeve, and all the food, all the sticky chocolate, sweets, it's all on his sleeve. And he goes like that and wipes some of it off, and he continues. And Bran thinks it's quite sort of disgusting. So the boy speaks a little clearer now. He says, "Well, what do you want to know for?" So I'm just curious. What's inside the matchbox? The boy looks at him and smiles, but it's a wicked smile that children have, maybe especially boys, when they know that they're up to something. They've got a secret. Little boy has a secret, and he's going to do something a bit naughty, or sometimes it goes beyond naughty, and it's quite wicked. And this boy, a little bit younger than Bran, he was about 11 years old, 10, 11 years old, and he says to Bran, he's a spider. And when he says spider, a really wicked smile. I can see the wickedness in his eyes. Yes, he's a spider, and I caught it this morning. But I'm going to pull its legs off. And Bran can't believe what he says. He says, "You're going to do what?" He says, "Well, I'm going to open this box." He holds the box up in his hand. He says, "I'm going to, this afternoon, when my mummy and daddy take me home, I am going to open up this box, and I'm going to slowly pull all the legs off the spider and see what it does." And Bran can't believe it, because Bran is such a kind boy. He lived with his mum, and he looks after the goats back home and the chickens, and even when he's caught the fish, he catches the fish to eat them, and he's never been cruel to animals. He has gone hunting, but only for food, and he wouldn't dream of being unkind to animals or anyone else for that matter. So he says to the boy, "That's quite a cruel thing to do. What has the spider ever done to you?" Nothing, says the boy. All the time the boy's looking. He's looking in his hands, and he keeps licking his fingers and starts to lick his arms. And Bran thinks, "Oh, it's horrible." And in front, while they're talking, in front of them is a large tent selling sweets, large stall, should I say, selling sweets. And all the time, or most of the time, that Bran has been talking to this young child, his eyes have been fixed on a stall selling sweets. And there's some large sweets, quite expensive sweets and chocolate. But just at the very front, was a tray, or little trays of sweets. And Bran had noticed this. They were for the children. And they were 3 copper pennies each. So Bran cleverly says to the boy, "Could I buy the spider off you?" "Well, no, it's my spider, So Bran says, "Well, what if I gave you three copper pennies, and then you could go and buy some sweets from over there from that man?" And the boy thinks about it. He goes, "Well, but my mum and dad told me to stay here. I don't know." He said, "Well, I'll be 18 on my next birthday." He said, "I am older than you." He said, "There's not many, you'll be quite safe, and it's only over the road. I'll look after you." He says, I'll keep an eye on you, or I'll keep an eye on the box. You don't have to take the box with you and lose the spider. I'll wait right here. I'll look after the box with the spider inside. The matchbox, will be perfectly safe. You go across, buy yourself a tray of sweets. I'll take the spider, and then when your mum and dad come back, it's fine." So the boy thinks about it. "Well, okay then. Eventually he agrees. So reaching inside his pocket, and he takes out his 12 copper pennies, and he gives the boy 3, and he drops them into his hand. And Bran doesn't want to touch his hand because it's all horrible and sticky. He goes, "There you go, there you go. And he drops the 3 pennies in the boy's hand, and the boy jumps to his feet, and he looks at it and his eyes light up, and Bran can tell that he's completely forgotten about the conversation that he's just been having with him. He's completely forgotten about the matchbox with a spider inside, and he also notices that the boy is quite larger than what he first thought. So he runs over the road. He doesn't even say thank you. He just grabs, he just squeezes the copper, the 3 coins. He runs across the road. He goes up to the stall, the man on the stall. He puts the 3 copper pennies into his hand. He grabs a box, and before any time's gone, he's stuffing his face again, and he comes back across and sits on the wall. But Bran has gone. He's disappeared. Didn't want to wait around, and he's carefully tucked the matchbox in his pocket, and he's continued to walk. He didn't want to hang around. He didn't quite like that village, and he disappeared. So he starts to walk, and the day gets hotter and hotter and hotter, and he keeps stopping. He gets a little bit of water. He always makes sure, because Bran was quite good. He knew where to find the water. Done a lot of been outside on the hills. He knew where the streams where the water would normally hide, and he also knew what plants would have water inside them. So he'd obviously got his bow and arrow with him. He'd got a little hunting knife as well, and various other sort of hunting tools. And he knew which leaves or which trees would have a little bit of refreshing water. And because it was a warmer climate, he also knew about the cactus, and he should carefully, without pricking his fingers, carve some of the leaves off the cactus and suck the juice out. So he was okay. And he kept walking and he kept walking. He wondered where his adventures would take him next. And he kept going for another couple of days, and every now and then he would take out the matchbox and just open it a little bit, just push it that little bit, just peep inside, and you see a little black spider, no bigger than a penny itself, with 8 little legs there, and he popped it back in his pocket. So eventually he kept going, he kept walking, and the days were, I thought, how warm, how hot, becoming unbearable. And then he looks around, he thinks, no, that can't be. They kept on walking. But he stopped, and he thought, I'm sure I can hear the hooves of horses. No, he dismissed it. He kept on walking. And then he saw a bridge in the distance. And just beyond the bridge, he was quite certain, it's quite a hazy day, very hard to see into the distance. You have to cover your eyes up before he could make out a castle. And he stopped again. And yes, he was right. He did hear the hooves of horses. And they were galloping. The people, the men on horseback, had seen Bran, and they'd speeded up, and they caught him up. And, halt! Who goes there? But he didn't know what to say. And the second person said, you answer the question, boy. Who are you? What are you doing here? Bran was a little bit nervous. I mean, he'd seen men, or had seen men on horseback before, but never like these. The horses were so big, and Bran immediately thought it must belong to a king or queen, because they had the emblem on the emblem of the king or queen, and all the men had helmets on with feathers. They had red feathers, ostrich feathers coming out of the top, and a sword at the side. Oh, goodness, what have I done? Who are you? Who are you? They asked again. And Bran was quite nervous. He said, well, I'm Bran. I'm over a week's walk away. I'm just here. I'm just on my own. I'm just on an adventure. We don't believe you. No one wanders around like this. And before Bran could explain any further, he said, you are coming with us. You're coming with us to see the king. There's an army approaching. Are you a spy? Well, I'm not a spy. I'm not a spy. I'm not part of an army. You will answer to the king. An army approaches. to steal his youngest and last daughter away. You will answer to the king." So before he could say anything else, one of the guards, he managed to pick Bran up and he threw him onto the horse. "Get on the horse." And together with the rest of the riders, they rode to the castle. And they went inside the castle, and Bran was very nervous. And there's all these guards around, all with their helmets on. All very, looking very tall and strong. And Bran didn't know what to do. And eventually, he came into the big throne room. And at the very end of the courtroom, there was a king. The king looked very old indeed, old and tired. And the guards had marched him up and they threw him to the floor. This young man was found by the bridge, sire." Was he indeed? And the old king, he tried to be strong, but Bran immediately knew his voice was weak and tired. And he looked up and his hair was grey, wrinkled face, his eyes. And Bran imagined that once upon a time this king would be tall and strong and probably handsome. And now he was old and just trying, really, he was a king, but he was trying to be strong and brave. "Yes, your sire, we found him by the bridge. We think he's a spy." And then the king told Bran, he said, "Come closer, come closer. Are you a spy? Have you come to steal my daughter?" "No, I haven't. As I said, I'm just on an adventure." "Well, let me tell you," he said, "I have been king for many, many, many years over this land. And I have 7 daughters. 6 of them are now married and living in different kingdoms. Some of them are queens. They have sons and daughters. They're happy. They're all married. But I only have one daughter left. My youngest daughter. My wife, sadly, has died 3 years ago. On her next birthday, she will be 18. But I thought, same age as me. She'll be 18 on her 18th birthday. And that means she will be married. And I will decide who she marries, just like I've done for my other 6 daughters." And Bran, he continued to listen. And the king continued. And he went into a rant and a rage about how he'd built the castle, how he'd conquered all his enemies. He was the king. No one would take his crown. He would decide how and when and who his daughter would marry. And he went on about an army approaches. An army's approaching from the east, and they're going to take away my daughter. And then he went on to say, "How am I going to stop them? Because I am old, and so are all my warriors." And with that, he asked all the warriors, all the guards in the palace to take off the helmets. And when they did, Bran suddenly realised that they were all old. They were all old men trying to look strong and brave. What am I going to do? When the queen died, all the young people, they left my lovely city, because it turned out that the king had become old and bitter, and no one really liked him anymore. He'd kept his young daughter here, wanted to marry her off, and only the oldest guards who was with him when he first became king they'd stayed loyal to the king. But all the young men, all the young women, and all the children, they'd all gone. They didn't want to live under the king's rule anymore, because he was old and nasty, and he really didn't care. And that's because he'd begun like this when his wife had sadly died. Who can keep my daughter safe? The army approaches, and none of these guards are strong enough or young enough to defeat the army. It approaches, it's assembling now on the east wall. Go and take a look. Go and take a look. So they went off to the wall and looked over, and there, just as the king had said, there were hundreds and hundreds of soldiers, and they're all young and strong and fierce, and they have big swords and shields and spears and bow and arrows, and they just were going to overwhelm the king. In my youth, he said, I would have crushed that army. What am I supposed to do? We can last for a couple of days. Under siege will be okay, 2 or 3 days, possibly 4 days at the most. But eventually, they'll get inside. They'll kill all my guards. They'll probably kill me, or take me as prisoner and laugh at me. But most of all, they'll take my youngest daughter, and I'll have her married. And that will not be happening. Can you help me? Well, Bran had never done any fighting. He'd once fought off an old wolf that tried to have him for lunch. But luckily Bran, he had his hunting knife, and he'd sort of gone like that. Yeah, the wolf didn't like it, and he'd fired a couple of arrows at it, not to kill it. He thought the wolf scare it off, really. He'd fired a couple of arrows near misses, and the wolf had scarpered away. And he once remembered he did when he was about 14. He'd had a little bit of a wrestle with another boy of similar age, but nothing much. He'd never taken on an army. What could he do? What could Bran do? So the king then flew into a rage. He says, I don't like your attitude, boy. The king was like that when it was nice, and then he was old, and he seemed to be so old and narky and a bit so grumpy. I'll have you taken to the dungeon, boy. Yes, that's it. I'll lock you in the dungeon. And then whatever happens to me and my army, it doesn't matter, because I'll keep the key. I'll throw it away or hide it somewhere. You rot in the jail. They said, what's the choice? He said, in the morning, you will tell me what your choice is. You either go out there and defeat the army. You're young. You must have some ideas. You will defeat that army, or I'll throw you in the dungeon. I'll have you thrown in the dungeon. What could Bran do? Won't you save my daughter? And then, as he said, won't you save my daughter? He started to scream her name. Sophie! Sophie, come here. Come and meet Princess Sophie. And from behind one of the curtains came the most beautiful young woman indeed. And Bran had never, ever seen anyone so beautiful. Just that little bit shorter than Bran, but she had beautiful, long, raven black hair, and it shining in the sunlight. She had the most gorgeous brown eyes. Bran noticed a beautiful, smooth skin, and she managed to smile, and what a smile it was. And she moved so beautiful and gracefully. And for the first time in his life, Bran knew he'd never fallen in love before, but he knew he must be falling in love. This is Sophie, this is my daughter, won't you save her? Before she could even speak, the king sent her away. Go away now, he's seen you, go away. I summoned you, you've got, go away. Bran didn't know what to do. Guards, take him away to one of the rooms and lock him in there. In the morning, we'll send him out. And if he decides not to go out, then take him to the dungeon. If he goes to face the army, they'll probably have him executed anyway. He's probably a spy. I think, take him away. So they took him away and threw him inside the room and locked the door. Bran, he didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do at all. Just sat there thinking. And he didn't cry, because he was quite a strong young man, but he thought about his moment. He was speaking out loud now, saying, have I made the right decision? Why have I come on this journey? Why? What will happen to me? And then all of a sudden, he heard a voice. What about? And he looked up, he thought, where's that voice coming from? He looked, where can that be coming from? And he looked in the little wardrobe, and he looked under the bed, and he's looking around the room, And he's tapping on the window, he's thinking, where is that voice coming from? And then he started to say, I can help you. I can help you. About, I can help you. So, where's it coming from? Absolutely just puzzled. Could not understand where the voice was coming from. And then, all of a sudden, it dawned on him. And Bran thought, no, it can't be. It's coming from inside his bag. So he opened up the bag, and he took out the little matchbox. And inside the matchbox was a spider. And he popped it open. And when he did that, the little spider came crawling out. And it sat for the very first time, wasn't scared, it sat on top of the matchbox. And it looked at Bran and it said, Bran, don't be afraid. I can help you. I can help you. You saved my life. I will save yours. And Bran, I mean, he didn't want to laugh or upset the spider. He said, he just didn't really believe the spider. He said, well, how can you help me? He says, you're just a little spider. He says, you're no bigger than a penny. And there's an army outside. There's hundreds and hundreds of fierce young soldiers out there. They'll chop me up. They'll kill me within minutes. He said, I can't fight them. He said, and if I don't go and fight them, then the king's going to throw me in the dungeon. He's going to throw me in the dungeon and throw away the key, and I'll just rot there. And when people do eventually find me, I'll just be a horrible pile of bones. And the spider started to laugh. And when he started to laugh, he didn't stop. And Bran got a little bit annoyed at this. He said, what are you laughing at, spider? What are you laughing at me for? He said, don't you know who I am? And the weak, this very tiny, weak spider's voice had disappeared. It was a very deep, very strong voice. He said, do you know who I am? He said, well, you're just a little spider. He said, I am not. I am Anak Kalu. Anak Kalu, last of the great spiders of the Lost Kingdom. He said, what? Don't you believe everything you see, young Bran? He said, I am the last of my kind. The last of my kind. And with that, the spider, a load of green light flashed over the spider. And all of a sudden, the spider nearly filled the room. And Bran was absolutely petrified. The spider couldn't hardly fit inside the room. It was the biggest, most giant spider he had ever seen. It must have been as big as 25 horses. It looked like the side of his cottage. I am the great Anak Kalu. And with that, he cowered down a little bit, did Bran. And Anak Kalu said, do not be afraid. Let me tell you something about myself. You see me now. When you first saw me, a little spider, just a little everyday spider, and that greedy boy had managed to capture me, put me inside the matchbox, and was cruelly going to pull off my legs. How cruel can people be? But you saved me. I have not seen that kindness in humans for hundreds of years. Many thousands of years ago, when we were left alone, we used to rule our own kingdom. There were thousands of us giant spiders. The people worshipped us, they revered us like gods, and we protected them from the foul beasts that attacked the villages. The spiders were kings. But then, over the centuries, we were feared. We were hunted down and mercilessly killed in the most cruel ways. All my brothers, all my sisters have gone. My aunties, my uncles, even my mother and father. And to my knowledge, I am the only one left of my kind. I have sent messages out. You see, spiders are telepathic. And I bet you didn't know that, did you, Bran? I can speak to the other spiders. Yes, I can summon spiders at my will. And I've sent messages out to all the great spiders, but no one has replied. And why, you might ask, am I like this? Because I'm fed up. I'm tired. If I were to walk the land as the mighty Anuk Kalu, then what would happen? What would happen to me? I would be slaughtered. They would capture me and kill me, fear me. So now, one as mighty, one as magical and mystical as me has had to live my life as an everyday spider. And while I was sleeping, that horrible boy caught me. Just as I was about, I captured a little juicy fly. And now, then he captured me. I will reward you, though. I will defeat the army for you. No one can stand up to the great Anak Kalu. I will once again spin my thread, my webs will tangle them up. And then, so it changed back into a tiny spider again. So they could continue talking. Because, to be honest, I was getting quite frightened, wouldn't you, if you saw such a massive spider? I mean, spiders, when they're just as large as a penny, to some people can be very, very scary. But no, it changed back into a little penny-sized spider, and they continued to talk. So in the morning, guards came, they unlocked the door, and the king said, take him out of my castle, take him across the drawbridge, and take him back over the bridge. Let him face the army. Let him face his destiny. So that's what they did, and some of the guards were laughing, and they left him there. But quite quietly, as quiet as it could be, they approached the battlefield. Approached just a boy on his own. And because they wasn't bothered, really, the king and the guards, oh, that boy, what's he going to do? They went back and just laughed, and they had a little bit of breakfast, drunk a little bit of wine. But what did Bran do? He walked onto the battlefield, and he opened up the matchbox, and out came the spider. And the green light swirled around again, and once again, Anak Kalu was mighty again. And he went to the left. Imagine, how quick spiders are. And he went, scuttled about. He went there, and everywhere. And he was scuttling. Just so quick. 8 gigantic legs and his fangs. And all the warriors feared him. And they run away. And he went after them. And he gobbled some of them up. And he had the pincers. And he killed some of them. And he killed a few more. And then some of them became a little bit braver. And they charged at him on the horses. He managed to get those as well. And they slashed at him with the swords. But he was too big and strong. And then whilst he was getting him, all the web, he was spinning his magic web, his big strong web. And it was as thick as a climbing rope, or ropes you find on the ship. And he went round and round and round and round the horses, and round all the warriors. And very soon, all the army was defeated. Absolutely just gone completely. None of the army was left. None indeed. Bran supposedly had defeated the army, but he had the help of Anak Kalu. So, the people, the king and all his guards, some of them had fallen asleep by now, and some of them were smoking a pipe, telling tales, laughing about when they were still young, just going to take another drink of coffee. And some of them were still laughing about that boy and what they'd do to him. Would they capture him? Would they have tortured him? Really horrible things. And then all of a sudden, there's a knock at the castle gate. I'm here! He shouted up. It's me! It's Bran! I've defeated the army. Let me in. They couldn't believe it. They all jumped up. The king did. What's happening? The guards let him back in, and most people were speechless. But the king managed to. How have we managed to do it? I mean, what have you done? He said, well, I have my secrets. And some people then became a little bit scared, and they pointed, and they said, he's a wizard. No, he's a sorcerer. He's evil. Let's get stoned. Leave him, said the king. No, he's defeated the army. He said, well, I've defeated the army. He said, and now, he said, you promised me, he said, if I defeated the army, I protected you, and was take your daughter away and keep her safe. And the king looked, he says, he pulled out, quite cleverly, he pulled out the matchbox when he said this. He said, if you don't, my power is here, in this matchbox. And because the king knew that the army was defeated, and all the guards knew, they all cowered away from a simple matchbox. And he held it up in his hand, and a little spider, and that said, yes, I am the power in here, do not unleash me. And didn't expose himself as a spider, didn't reveal himself like that, no. And with that voice they knew he must have some magic. Let him go, he said, we're old, we've defeated the army. And the king, he gave in to the king, he said, look, take my daughter, but please, he said, you must continue to travel south. He said, there is the kingdom, the mighty kingdom of gold. I know the king there, he's a good friend, and his youngest son, he's looking for a bride. He wants someone to marry, and these two, my beautiful Princess Sophie, must marry his youngest son. Take us south, but leave me alone. I am an old king. Just leave me here to die in peace. Please do not unleash your power. So with that, they went. The drawbridge was open, and they continued on their journey, and he couldn't believe it, could not believe what had happened. And they started to chat, went back on the path, and continued to travel south. And Bran looked at Sophie and said, well, you heard what your father said, he said. And she sort of looked, and did she really want to go south, or was she a little bit unsure? Now, they hadn't gone long, they hadn't travelled that far, when they noticed a man just at the side, just a little stream at the side. Well, this stream that was flowing into a river. And there was a man at the side, and he was fishing. So Bran went up to him. Sophie at the side, introduced himself. He said, have you caught anything yet? He said, well, just a few, not much now. He said, I haven't really caught enough to feed my family. He said, I've got a wife at home. I've got a wife at home, and I've 5 children, and I've only managed to catch 2 fish. And I've run out of bait, and I don't know what I'm going to do because I've no money, and the 2 fish won't feed us all. What can I do? What can I do? So Bran said, well, I wish I could help, but I don't think I can. Oh, well, if you can't help, that's it then. And just as he was about to go, Bran was just about to walk off, because this man was a little bit grumpy and telling Bran about his wife and his 5 children. He noticed, just by the feet of the fisherman, a little brown sack, and it moved. What's in the bag? What's in the bag? Asked Bran. Oh, you don't want to know what's in there. She said, well, I do really. He said, what is it? He said, well, he said, it's two manky kittens. What do you mean 2 manky kittens? He said, well, he said, the thing is, he said, not only have I got my wife and my five children at home, he said, myself, and we've only got 2 fish. He said, the children, they found these 2 kittens, and they wanted to keep them, but I can't afford to keep them, so what can I do? The best thing is, he said, I'm going to throw them in the river, in the sack, I'm going to throw them in the river. Look, I've even tied a few rocks around them. Well, Bran was absolutely horrified. He said, how could anyone possibly put 2 lovely little kittens inside a sack, tie a stone around the bottom, and was going to throw it in? He said, well, I don't know. He said, I thought little, if I caught a load of fish, I'd leave them with a little bit of fish. I'd just open the sack and let them run free, and let them take the chance, and let them eat some of the fish before they went into the world on the road. He said, but I've only managed to catch 2 fish, so it looks like I'm going to throw them in. But then Bran had a brilliant idea. He said, well, what if I gave you some money? Money? So I said, yes. He said, well, what I could do, he said, why don't I buy the kittens off you? Well, buy them off me? What do you mean? He said, well, I could give you 3 pennies, 3 copper pennies, and I'm quite sure, he said, the fish bait, which you've run out of fish bait, and if you go back to one of the towns or the little villages, it's not so far away, you could buy many bags of fish bait, come back, and I'm sure that you'll catch a load of fish, go home, you'll be happy, your wife will be happy, your children will be happy, and you can all have some lovely fish, and I'll give you 3 pennies for that in exchange for the kittens. Well, what? Oh, excuse me. Well, it didn't take much thinking about. Whereas the kid, the kid that likes sweets and who's debating about the spider, and the man soon agreed. Well, I suppose 3 pennies is far better than nothing. 3 pennies is far better than nothing. Well, all right then. And he more or less grabbed the 3 pennies out of Bran's hand, and he gave him the sack. He gave him the sack, and quickly Bran took the sack and it started walking. And they just waited while they'd gone out of sight. They opened up the sack, and beautiful kittens they were. Little small, fluffy, black and white kittens. One's male, one female. Meow, meow, meow. And they were so friendly. And Sophie picked one up, and Bran did. And they nuzzled in, and they started just nuzzled into the neck. And then they held them in their hands, and they stroked them and tickled them, and they were purring. Absolutely, they loved it. They loved it. And what were we going to do with them? Well, Bran said, well, we can't leave them. That nasty man was going to throw them in. Maybe we could take them with us. So Bran, being a kind person, said, well, yes, we'll take them with us. So they kept going along the way, and managed a couple of days passed, and then really horrible sound was heard behind. It kept going along, and it was desert, sort of desert land that was in, with large rocks to either side. And they kept going in Sophie and Bran, and they had the kittens, and every now and then they let the kittens out to have a run around, and sometimes they'd travel in one of Bran's pockets and just peep out and have a look round, and they'd be meowing, and sometimes Sophie would carry them. All of a sudden they heard the most horrible snarling and screaming behind, and Bran had never heard anything like it, and neither had Sophie, and he looked behind, and he didn't have to look twice this time, because behind was a horrible pack of hyenas, and they were coming straight for them, and they had fangs, the teeth, the fangs were all slavering, and their claws were nearer and nearer, and they were just, and Bran knew, we need to do something quick. So he looks up to the left, and he looks up to the right. Quickly, he said, we must climb up there, we've got to climb up there, up to that top of that rock. Sophie looked round, and they started to run, and luckily, there was enough distance in front of Bran and Sophie and the hyenas, and they ran as fast as they could. And he picked Sophie up, did Bran, and he threw her up halfway. He threw her as far as where he could up the rock, and she grabbed hold, and she managed to climb to the top. And then Bran followed, and they were on the top of the rocks with the kittens, and the kittens were a little bit scared. And Bran started to break off some of the rocks. The rock was quite crumbly, it was sandy, and the hyenas were jumping, trying to jump up, and they looked absolutely so hungry and savvy. And the pack of hyenas were scrambling up the rocks. But luckily, Bran, he had his little hunting knife, and he was stabbing at them. Get down. And Sophie didn't need anyone to tell her what to do. She picked up a few rocks and were throwing them down, but they knew they had to do something quick because they couldn't keep them away. And then all of a sudden, the strangest thing happened, because Bran had set down the sack at the side of it with the kittens in, and the kittens, it wasn't like meowing, it wasn't meow, meow, meow. A rather posh voice. Oh, please, if you don't mind, let me out, sir. Me and my sister will help you out here. And then a female voice said, Oh yes, we will, of course we will. Yes. Well, Bran could not believe what was happening, and with the episode with the spider, he wasted no time. He opened the sack and the kittens jumped out, but as soon as the paws hit the rock, they transformed into two of the most magnificent tigers you have ever seen. But there wasn't no normal sized tigers. They were 4 times bigger than any normal tiger. So big and strong and elegant. And they both looked at Sophie and then they both looked at Bran. And in unison, they both said, "Good afternoon. I am Simon and this is Simone. We are the last 2 of the magnificent tigers of the East." Well, they couldn't believe it. And Simon went on to say, "What a good, kind-hearted boy you are. That horrible man was going to drown us. And we are so magnificent like this." And with that he roared, and the hyenas looked up and knew that they were wanting to get at the tigers. "We've had to live like this for many, many a year. We used to roam the forest proud and magnificent. We used to be the prize of the kings and queens and let them ride on our back, ride into battle with the kings, queens of the East. It was such a fantastic life. But sadly, we were hunted to the last. Our heads decorating people's halls and rooms. It was disgusting. Our skins used as rugs. What an awful end to our magnificent existence. And we've had to hide as kittens. And why? Because everyone, all the children love kittens. Now we are back. You, young Bran, are such a kind young man. Let us be of assistance." And with that, he reached out such a mighty, mighty paw and just moved Sophie and Bran back. And both Simon and Simone let out such a magnificent, loud roar. The rock which they were stood on, it shook under their feet, and they jumped down, and it didn't take long. The hyenas did their best, but the claws came down. Boom! Their teeth were so large and sharp, and there must have been 25 hyenas, but they were no match for the tigers. They clawed at them. They jumped on the tiger's back, but they just flung them away. And they gobbled one up, they gobbled 2 up, gobbled 3 up, and soon all the hyenas were being gobbled up until the last one. And they gobbled that one up as well, and then they were just tail and firm and all, just a mass of what was left of the hyenas on the desert floor. And just when they thought that it was all over, a massive black stallion came charging at them. "You have killed my hyenas. I am the Black Sorcerer of the East, and I will take Princess Sophie as my hostage and ransom her to the king. You may have defeated my pack of wild hyenas. You will not defeat me." And with that, the sorcerer on his black stallion charged. He charged at Simon and Simone, and he drew out 2 massive, sharp swords. He kept charging at them, but they were not scared. They crouched down just like tigers do, and just at the last minute, Simone jumped high into the air, and he reached up, and he tried to kill her with a sword, but he couldn't do it. But just from the side, they tricked the sorcerer. Simon jumped from the side and with his massive, 4 times bigger claw, took the sorcerer's head clean off, and it rolled on the floor, rolled on the desert floor, and then they gobbled him up. And the horse, they didn't eat the horse. It galloped away, never to be seen again. Well, no one could believe what had just happened. and they climbed down from the rock. They all gave each other a hug, and they were laughing and joking, and they couldn't believe what was happening. And Simon and Simone, they looked at Sophie and they looked at Bran, and they said, look, thank you ever so much. Climb on our backs, climb on our backs. So they did. You must be so tired. We want to walk proud once more. Please ride with us. So they continued south. They kept going, And what a magnificent sight it was. So we had Simon and Simone, who were two magnificent, giant, magical tigers. And they were telling all the tales about the kings, the queens, the rajas, and all things like that. Just magnificent tales of the East. And every now and then, the spider, yes, Anak Kalu used to say, and he used to tell a little tale. Now, he didn't change at first. Because he'd sort of come, he quite liked it in his matchbox. And Anak Kalu, although the last of the spiders, the giant spiders, he liked it in his matchbox, but every now and then he'd ask Bran, please let me out. So push the matchbox open, and he too would turn into the magnificent spider again and walk at the side of them. And what a sight that would be if you were walking through the desert. You see two tigers 4 times larger than any tiger you've seen, and you'd see a girl, a Princess Sophie, and you see Bran riding on the back, and just at the side with his massive 8 legs, you see Anak Kalu, last of the magical, fantastic spiders. Brilliant stuff indeed. And they walked for 3 days and 3 nights, laughing, joking, and telling tales. And then, on the morning of the 4th day, they came to a ridge in the sand, and they looked down, and there was a mighty city indeed. And there was no way around it, no way over it, obviously no way under it. Obviously, they had to go through it. So it was decided. They didn't need any persuasion. Bran looked at Anak Kalu. He said, you have to go back in the matchbox. And by this time, although he liked the matchbox, he said, oh, well, do I really have to do? I am Anak. He started to regale, he knew who he was. I am Anak Kalu. Said, well, no, we've heard that before, Anak. Just get back in the matchbox, please, and go in my pocket, because we can't really go into the city with you looking like a giant spider. And Simon and Simone, they tutted, oh, we've had such a fantastic time, but I'm sure we'll roar again. So they did a few more mighty roars and leapt about a little bit, and then changed back in to 2 little cute kittens. Jumped back in the little sack, and Sophie and Bran walked into the city, and kept huddled together and walking through all the streets. But it soon became apparent it wasn't a very nice city. Not at all. People were rushing around so fast, and people were so eager to introduce yourself and take your money, and they went to all the shops. There were shopkeepers outside trying to drag you into the shops to spend money. The taverns were trying to get you in there. There were people walking around drunk, and there were people walking around with such wealth, and they didn't like it, to be honest. They just thought, no, this is not really the place for us. And so they started to make their way out of the city. They had to go through it. Let's get out. Let's just quietly get out without drawing any more attention to ourselves. And just up there on the edge of the city was quite a large market square, the largest any of them had ever seen. And just as they were going out, ignored all the stores, all the shopkeepers talking and trying to lure them in. They just kept walking. But then all of a sudden, they couldn't help noticing the last one, because it was a large store indeed. And there was a horrible man who was talking, shouting. He didn't talk, he was shouting. And when he used to shout, he was spitting as well. And he was shouting at a frail old lady, just a really old lady, grey hair, and her eyesight not so good, and she only had a few teeth left, and her back was hunched, and she was struggling to walk, a really old and frail lady who looked like she wanted a drink, looked like she wanted something nice and warm to eat, and all they couldn't help noticing, and they couldn't help listening to the words, and all the old lady was saying was, "It's my flute, it's my wooden flute." "No, you horrible old hag, you are verb, get away!" No. And then a friend came, one of the market traders' friends came, and then suddenly, 3 or 4 men, and they're all shouting and pushing her, saying, "We've seen you hanging round here, you're horrible, you stink, get a bath." And they started to ridicule her, and saying, "But it's my flute, you stole it." "I'm not a thief, you can see, you stupid old hag, that this is my stall, and I sell all these wooden gifts, wooden drums, wooden picture frames, wooden flutes just like these. Why would that be yours? But I know it's mine, I know it's mine." And she kept pointing to this particular wooden flute. And to be honest, when you looked at it, there were 2 or 3 different types of wood that had been used. There was a very deep black wood. There was a blood red wood, and there was a yellow corn coloured type wood. That there was only 3 types of wood that the items have been made from. But this particular flute that the old lady was protesting was her flute, it was a grey white wood, and it didn't fit in. And to the neutral sort of person, it was probably fairly obvious it wasn't his. And he was just about, he couldn't resist, couldn't Bran. He had to help out. So he went over and he tried to sort things out, and they're pushing and shoving, saying, "Go away, we're gonna call some of the king's guards. They'll have you thrown in the dungeon, that'll sort you out." And the old lady was still nearly in tears. And Bran approached. "What do you want? What do you want, boy?" said the stall owner. He said, "Well, I couldn't help overhearing all the shouting. I just wondered if I could help." "Do, what can you do?" And the woman again said, That's my flute, that's my flute." "It's not yours, and anyway, you can't even afford to pay for it, you horrible, disgusting woman." He said, "You haven't even got a single penny, let alone 3 pennies. And with that, Bran didn't have to do anything else, because he just reached into his bag, he got out 3 copper pennies, and just said to the stall owner, "Can I buy the flute?" "Yes." He gave him the 3 pennies, and he took the flute, immediately gave it to the old lady, and he said, come with me." "Yeah, that's right, you go away, boy, you get her out of my sight." And they all went away. And the old lady thanked Bran for helping her out, and they walked together. "Where are you going?" The old lady said, "Well, I don't think I'm really welcome in the city, so I'll travel with you for a while." And they got on the edge of the city, and they sat down for a rest. And Sophie said to Bran, she said, where are we actually going? Where are we going? Are we really going to continue to travel south to the city of gold? And you're gonna sort of leave me there? Is that what you plan to do, Bran, on your adventure? What do you think? And Bran sort of thought for a while. He said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Obviously, I thought that was what you wanted me to do. That's what your father wanted." And she looked at Bran and she said, "Well, no, I don't." She said, I'm the youngest of seven sisters, and all my other sisters are married. They're unhappy, and my father's married us off. We've never been allowed to do anything that we wanted to do, and all of a sudden, I've never met anyone like you, Bran. You came to the castle. You're such a kind, loving, thoughtful young man, and I've been watching and listening to what you do. You've saved my life, and I know the story of the spider. I've saved Anak Kalu's life, kittens, and now this. I want to stay with you. I want to stay with you. And he's thinking he's Bran. And Sophie looked at him again and said, well, do you understand what I'm actually saying to you, Bran? And with that, she walked over to him and she placed her hands on his really gently and loving. And she looked into his eyes and she kissed him. She kissed him very gently on the cheek. And Bran had never been kissed like that before. Obviously his mum had kissed him, but never been kissed like that by a young woman. She kissed him gently on the cheek, and as she pulled away she smiled, and she kept smiling, and she had that certain look in her eyes and face. And she kissed him again, just once, and not for very long, but she kissed him on the lips, and she said, I want to be with you. And no more explanation was needed. Well, the old woman smiled. She said, oh, isn't that nice? She said, well, I think you're a very nice young man. I want to stay with you as well, Bran. And from inside the matchbox, yes, Anak Killu, I'd like to stay with you. I don't want my legs pulling off. You've protected me, and I can't always be the Anak Killu, the magnificent great spider. What if another boy gets me in a matchbox? I want to stay with you. From inside the bag, the kittens, Simon and Simone, said, yes, they're right, Bran. He said, you're such a brave, kind young man. You've looked after us all, you've protected us all. In fact, you've saved us all, and it's all right when we're running around being tigers and mighty, but we can't fight everyone off. They'll kill us. We're not wanted in this world any longer, so who will look after us? So Bran started to think. He said, well, maybe you could come and live with us. What do you mean? So he told them about where he lived, and he told them about his mum and his life. And he said, fantastic, that sounds brilliant. We can be kittens. We can be kittens in your cottage. And I can be a spider. And in the old where the chickens are, there'll be little flies and stuff. I'll keep the flies away. And the old woman said, well, maybe I could come along. So they all agreed that the adventure, it wasn't really over, but they were going to go back. But the only way back was through the city. So Bran thought, well, we can't go back now because we don't want to draw any attention to ourselves. So we'll wait just after midnight and we'll carefully sneak through the big city, the horrible city, and then we'll follow our trail back. So that's just what they did. Waited until nightfall, just after midnight, and it was a particularly dark night. And luckily, it wasn't a full moon. So the city was in a little bit more darkness. So carefully sneaked through the city. Luckily got to the other side and felt a lot better. And I went back along the trail. And I went back and through the desert. And then they remembered the rocks. And they laughed and joked about how they were up on the top of the rocks. And I thought about the hyenas. And they regaled all the stories again. They laughed and joked. It was fantastic. They walked a little bit further. And look, there's the river where the man was fishing, and they laughed and joked. And at that, Simon and Simone, they jumped out and they raced up and down the riverbank as mighty tigers. And they even carried the rest of the party on the backs. And then what they had to do when they got to the castle, to be very careful again. They said, well, we'll travel by night again because your father thinks that I'm taking you south. So what we'll do is we'll travel as soon as the night time comes. We'll travel through the night as quietly as what we can. But the tigers, Simon and Simone, came up with a plan. They said, the best people to get you through this. We couldn't do this in the city. It was far too dangerous. But this is open land. This is what tigers do best. We can see best in the dark. Our cat eyes are fantastic, and we can travel a lot quicker and a lot more silent. Jump on our backs. So the old woman jumped on Simon's back, and Bran and Sophie jumped on Simone's back, and they stalked through the land quickly. And they did see some of the king's guards patrolling on horseback, But the tigers were far too quiet and powerful. They just leapt past. And when they got past, then they all laughed. They all laughed. And they went further and further, went all the way back and laughing and joking. And Simon and Simone did a little bit of hunting, caught a few rabbits and stuff like that. And that Calou started changing to a spider. They all laughed and joked. And soon, it was just approaching nearly the 9th full moon. And eventually, just in the distance, on the trail, getting nearly back to where he lived. He saw his little cottage, and he went racing up. And his mum came running out. And she, as soon as she saw Bran, she was in floods of tears. Bran, 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 she said, Bran. She flung her arms around him and she kissed and cuddled him, and she loved him, and she cried and she was laughing as well. And then she looked at Sophie and she said, who is this beautiful, beautiful young lady? And Bran said, this is Sophie, this is Princess Sophie, and I've rescued her, Mum. And he told the story, I've rescued her, and Mum, we are in love and we want to spend the rest of our lives together. And her mum just flung her arms around Sophie and couldn't believe it. But then he said, Mum, I've got something else to tell you, but don't be scared. And he told the story of the spider. And Nat Calou, his mum, couldn't believe it. And he let Nat Calou out, and he exploded. He exploded in big 8 legs. And he said, I'm pleased to meet you, Bran's mum. And he actually bowed. And he started singing a song. And he did a little bit of a dance. And he said, I've just been singing and dancing, so you're not as scared of spiders. And his mum said, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. I've got loads of horrible flies and bugs and you can sort them out. And then he told the tale of the tigers, of the kittens. He got them out of the bag and his mum cuddled them and stroked them and loved them. And then they turned into 2 mighty tigers. And it was absolutely fantastic. Well, you can keep the wolves away and you can keep everything away. But then they turned to the old woman and said, old woman, you haven't told us your name. She said, no, I haven't yet, and that is my secret, because now it's time for me to tell you something. No one knew what she was talking about, and she turned to Nat Calou. She said, Nat Calou, I know I have heard many tales of you, and I have known you since you were just a little baby. And I know that you are the last of your kind. And yes, you can live here as a little spider, and every now and then go back to your greatness. And the same for you, kittens, Simon and Simone. You are the last of the mighty, magnificent tigers. And the same to you, so every now and then you can charge round. But without doubt, when you do, people are around, spies travel these roads, people will see. And what will happen to you, Bran? Don't you think that the king will eventually find out where Princess Sophie is? And what about the black sorcerer from the east? There'll be others like him, and Mum. It won't be fair on you. So for a while you will live here. But eventually it will all end in tears, and it will all end for the worst. But I know a land. I have walked this earth for thousands and thousands of years. But I know a land where only the magical, the mystical, the mythical, the kind and good-hearted can go. There's only one way to get there, and that is why I needed my magical wooden flute. And there are others like you there. Bran, there are boys and men just like you. Sophie, there are other princesses like you. And she looked at Mum. Mum, you can come along too. You will fit in just nicely. There are many, many mums as good and as kind as you. But in this land, there are other mystical beasts. Wouldn't you want to see the giants, the blue bearded dwarves, the cyclops, the golden phoenix, many, many other mystical and magical creatures, the mermaids, the pink dolphins, the lady of the lake. Many, many magical, mystical beasts can live out the rest of their days in this wonderful land. And with that, she took the wooden flute and sat on the ground. And she crossed her legs and she started to play the magical flute. And what a tune it was. It sounded just like a flute would sound, but then it didn't. It was notes, but then it was more than notes. It was music. It was speaking to them all. And it echoed around the house. And it echoed around them. And it not only went in the ears, it went in the mouth, the nose, and the eyes. And it engulfed the whole body. And it continued to play. And then as they looked out, the sun was just setting. The sun was setting, but just on the horizon, they saw something, a large shadow at first, and then they heard mighty wing beats. And it got nearer and nearer and nearer. And it circled above. It was truly the most magnificent beast they had ever seen. It was a dragon. It was a green-scaled dragon. It was the magical emerald dragon. It had come to help out the old lady. And as it circled, it landed gently on the ground. And just before the sun hadn't quite set, and the sun's rays shone onto the green scales and shimmered like emeralds. It had the most powerful, largest black talons. Bigger, much bigger than those of the tigers. It had the most gorgeous golden eyes. It settled down in front of them. And it bowed to the old lady and she bowed back. Oh, mystical, magical, emerald green dragon. These beautiful, kind people and creatures are to be taken to the land far away, our secret. And with that, the dragon bowed again. And as they looked on the back, there were leather seats, leather saddles, just like you'd see on a horse, but much bigger. The old lady motioned with her hand, "Please, climb on board." And they all smiled and agreed and nodded. And Sophie got on first. And then the kittens came out of the bag and they said, "Can we?" And the old lady nodded. And they turned into the magnificent tigers again, Simone and Simon. And they leapt on to the dragon's wings. And then he gently put them on his tail. And the dragon was that big, he didn't mind. And then from inside, the matchbox, a Nakkikaloo. Me next. And he came out of the box and he turned into the great magnificent spider that he was. And without further ado, he jumped on to the back and he joined the mighty tigers. And that only left Bran. And he walked up to the old lady and he thanked her. He said, please tell me your name before I go. And the old lady said, "That is a secret I must keep. If I tell anyone my name, then all the magic will go. I must remain nameless for all the magic to happen. But I have walked the earth for thousands of years, and all the good people, all the good kind-hearted people like yourself, do deserve better. And the spiders, the giant tigers, the dragon, the cyclops, the giants, the dwarves, the elves, all the magical, mythical beasts and creatures all need something special, which is why I continue to walk the earth. And then when I find them, I play the magic wooden flute and summon the emerald green dragon, and it takes you away. Goodbye, Bran. You'll never see me again. I have work to do, but thank you for bringing me here. I'm not going to go back on the top path. I'm going to walk down the hill tomorrow morning. You've told me of the river, and I might take the western path, or maybe I might take the northern trail. Who knows? I shall decide in the morning. Goodbye, Bran, and live your life well. And with that, they gave each other a big kiss and a big cuddle. And Bran turned to go. He took 2 steps, but then he stopped. Oh, he said, I nearly forgot. And he turned around. And when Bran set off on his journey, he had 12 copper pennies. And on his journey, he had used 9 of them. So he reached inside his pocket and he took out his last 3 copper pennies. And he held them out and he gave them to the old lady. And he also gave her these words. Once again, thank you for doing all the work you do. I'm so glad that we met. Thank you. Please take my last 3 pennies, because tomorrow, regardless of you taking the western path along the river or the northern trail, you might need these to buy yourself a little bit of bread and food. He smiled, he turned, he climbed on the back of the emerald green dragon, and they all gave one last look and waved. Bye, bye-bye. They all waved to the old lady, who waved back. And then the dragon started to beat its wings once more. And it rose up and it took flight. And they all flew off into the sunset. And that is the tale of Bran and the 12 copper pennies. And I do hope that you have enjoyed this story as much as I have. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And just before I go, don't forget, is it this side or that side? I always forget. I think it could be this side. I think there's a hat, and if you want to put some money in, then please do so. Maybe you could put some pennies in for me. Goodbye for now, and thank you.